So let's get started this morning's webinar, Sage 200 Sales Order Processing. Now the idea of this webinar is to go through all the settings and the parameters. What we find is that people, as they once they first set up the system, they're a little bit nervous maybe and perhaps don't understand fully what all the settings and the parameters mean and how they can affect the way that you work within that module. And then also people that have been using the system for many years, they're just so used to the parameters that are set from the initial implementation, they're perhaps unaware of other options that are available to them. So hopefully this morning we can clarify all that and go through all the different options available to you. So there we go. So sales order processing, and hopefully you're all familiar with that screen. It is assumed that you are familiar with sales order processing. I won't be teaching you how to enter a new order and do the actual process, but we'll be looking at some different scenarios. So I'm going to start off looking in sales order processing system SOP utilities. In the system setup, we have SOP settings. A number of tabs there, which we're going to work our way through and have a little chat about. And then I'm going to go through some scenarios and actually put that into practice. So first of all, the document numbering tab. That's pretty straightforward, really. How do you want your order numbers and returns to be generated? Automatically by ticking that on, in which case you can just define the next order number and the next return number. Or if you switch that off, it'll prompt you for an order number when you save the sales order on data entry. This little button here now is just saying, do you want it to show you the order number when the order has been confirmed? It's usually ticked on. I don't know why you wouldn't want to know the order number, but that's just an option available to you. There's also the ability to just define the next quotation number, the pro forma number, and the dispatch note number. Okay, order entry. So when you're entering a new order and you add new item lines, hopefully you're all familiar with the buttons at the top of the screen whereby you can select a standard item, free text item, additional charge, or a comment. Now, if you're not selling stock items, maybe you're in the business, you're just a service industry, really don't need to be selling stock items. What you can do is just define that you don't want that option to be available, that users can only enter free text items. What are you allowing users to amend when they enter the order lines? So the top half of the screen here, we're talking about order line entry. Are we allowing the user to amend analysis codes on the order line and nominal codes on the order line? As opposed to here, which we're looking at the order header, and are we allowing users to amend the analysis code on the order header? So it could be that you allow the user to amend the analysis code on the order header, but when it comes to individual lines, that's not to be amended. You can just choose by selecting the appropriate tick box. There's also the option to take payments with the sales order. So it could be that when you're entering the sales order, you take part payment as a deposit at the point of order entry, or even full payment if you're dealing with cash sales. So first of all, we just define that we would allow payments to be recorded during full order entry. Do we want to invoice the payment with the order immediately? And what that means is that it would generate so say we raised an order for £100, we're taking a payment of £25, then an invoice for £25 will be posted immediately to that sales ledger account, matched to that receipt that we have taken. We'll see an example of that in just a moment. If we enable card processing, then when we take the payment, we will see that there's an option for an online payment that will automatically be created when we tick that enable card processing. And that will prompt you then for the card details to take, so you can take the Sage Pay card details at the time of placing the order. You do have to have a merchant account set up within the system. So as part of the setting up for the system, we've set up your merchant account, and that will give you visibility of that enable card processing option, so you can take card payments when you're processing your sales orders. The final option we have here is document taken by. By default, the user's login name will be the document taker, or it can be blank if we switch that off, and you can type in an originator manually. Default accounts. When it comes to posting through to the nominal ledger, this is asking us where we want the nominal code to be derived from. So by default, it's saying use the same nominal code as the stock item revenue code, as opposed to the nominal code that we've defined on the customer account. It's also asking us if we want to use the same cost center and department as a customer account. So we'll be looking at an example of this in just a moment. So our stock item revenue account may be 31,100. But on the customer account, we've said, well, this customer relates to cost center, ADM, department 123. So when we raise a sales order, the default nominal code will be 31,100 ADM 123. The same is true for the issues and the stock nominal accounts. When it comes to raising our cost of sale, do we want that nominal code that will be derived from the stock item to also use the cost center and department from the customer account? And if we tick that on, we also have the option of making the same choice for the asset of the stock account as well. So when we purchase the stock, when it adjusts the asset of the stock account on the balance sheet, it will also pick up the cost center and department if that's what we've ticked on here. Whenever we raise a sales order, it'll prompt us for a customer account. If it's a customer account, you select that detail and the invoice address is automatically set up within that account, within that customer account. But we do have the option to define a cash orders account. And again, we'll have a little look at this. When we sell to a cash account, we have the ability to actually type in a unique invoice name and address. So it just stops our sales ledger being bogged down with hundreds or thousands of one-off cash sales. We can also raise quotations within sales order processing. So again, we have the ability here to actually define a prospects account so that we don't have to create customer accounts in the sales ledger for all prospects, just in case that doesn't convert into a sale. So we're not sort of bogging down our sales ledger accounts with our prospects. Within the order processing tab, a number of options here. Do we want to enter our prices excluding VAT or including VAT? So if we're in the retail trade and we're wanting to enter the gross amount, or the net amount maybe, the gross amount, because that's what the sale would be, we would say the prices include VAT, and then Sage will automatically calculate the net backwards. However, for the majority of us, we tend to enter prices excluding VAT, and Sage will calculate the VAT to be added on top of our net price. If there's enough stock to fulfill our sales order, do we want the system to automatically allocate that stock when we enter the sales order? If that's ticked on, that's what will happen. If it isn't ticked on, then when we enter the sales order, regardless of the value of the quantity of stock that we're holding, no stock will be allocated to that sales order, and it will be a manual process to actually allocate that stock. If I go to Order Processing tab, you'll see here there's the Allocate Stock option, and that's what we would select if we didn't tick this Allocate Stock on Order Entry. Amend Pick and List. We want to allow Pick and List to be amended. That's just tick on or off. And when do we want to update the stock quantities? Is it the point that we dispatch the goods? So in other words, as soon as the goods go out of the door, then our stock is reduced? Or do we want to wait until the invoice is posted? If we wait until the invoice is posted, we get an accurate cost at that point in time, because that's the final part of the sales order transaction. If it's when the order dispatch is confirmed, then when we post the invoice, there may well be a catch-up cost of sale posting if there's a difference between the cost of the stock at the point of dispatch and the cost when the invoice is posted. If we were to select when the invoice is posted, I can't because I've got live orders, then this field becomes available. Which date do we want to use on the stock history? Is it the dispatch date or the invoice date? Now, when it comes to dispatching our order lines, it's possible to sell, as I mentioned, text lines, or service and labour stock items. You have the choice of the point of dispatching, of how you want to dispatch those particular items. If you notice on my menu on the left-hand side here, we have two options. We've got goods dispatched and received, and we have confirmed service and free text items. If we have the option set here, which is confirmed with goods dispatched and received, then when we dispatch our sales order, we will see all the items on the sales order needing to be dispatched, whether they be stock items, text items, or service and labour items. We do, however, have two more options available to us. We can confirm them separately as service and free text items, in which case we would need to go into the separate menu option to dispatch those items from our sales order. The final option we have available is confirmation is not required. So in other words, if we're selling a text order line, we just enter the new order, type in the text details that we're selling, and then we don't need to go through the dispatch process. We can go straight through to the invoice process. Those three options are available for both items, text order lines and service labor stock lines. Do we want to record details of cancelled orders for future analysis? I don't see why not. Okay, so that's usually ticked on. And then invoices and credit notes without linked payments. Do we want to add directly to the sales ledger? And what this means is that when we do our post invoices and credit notes, which is in our order processing option on the menu, we don't then have to go into the sales ledger and manually run update sales ledger. They will automatically be posted directly to the sales ledger. So it just cuts out that one action in the process. Our printing tab is asking us what documents we want to print. If I go to my sales order process map, it can look quite complex. So there's so many things that can be done within the sales order processing module, but not everything is relevant to everybody. For example, printing order acknowledgements. Some people like to send those out and other organizations don't find that necessary. Picking lists. Again, it's an option. Do you want to print picking lists or not? We've already mentioned the dispatching. Do you want to go through that for your text order items, text item orders lines, or not? So there's lots of things that you can change within this process, purely dependent on our settings. Now, most of that comes from this printing tab here. So do we want to print picking lists? So by ticking that, we then have that option available to us within the process map. And if we do want to print picking lists, do we want to manually print them, or do we want the system to automatically print them as part of the order entry? So once we enter an order, the picking list will automatically be produced. Do we want to print order acknowledgements? Okay, just on or off. Do we want to print dispatch notes when we run the dispatch process? So that's what documents we want to print. The rest of it is more what we want to print on those documents. So if you're using batch and serial number printing, do you want to print the batch number on the dispatch notes, and do you want to print the batch number on invoices? What items do we want to show on documents? Do we want to show unallocated items on picking lists? And do we want to show undispatched and unallocated items on dispatch notes? So the top half here is what do we want to print, what documents we want to print, and the second half is really what we want to show on those documents. The last part really is all to do with legislative printing, really. Well, the first part is just if you've got paid in full, what do you want to print out on the invoice? But the other two options here are all to do with EC related sales and reverse charge sales. So what text would you like to print in those particular scenarios? Our final tab is Intrastat. If we're importing or exporting a lot of goods from the EU, there are rules and regulations around Intrastat declarations. Sage will do that automatically for you. All we need to do is define that, first of all, we want to generate Intrastat entries, and we can define the default terms of delivery and default nature of transaction. All of that can be changed when we actually come to submit the Intrastat declaration. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of this in practice. So what I'm going to do is create a new order. Here we have the first option. If I select a customer account, then I pull up the details, and if I go to delivery and invoicing, my invoice name and address is grayed out. I can't change that. That is defined by the customer account. However, if I were to select a cash account and I go to my delivery and invoicing tab, I'm now able to type in the name, invoice name and address for this particular sales order. Okay, I'm going to raise a sales order for this particular customer. And if I go to Payment with Order and I select Record Payment, I have the option of selecting the payment in full. But if I untick that, I could actually enter a value. So if it's just a deposit that the customer is paying, I have full control of the value that I'm actually taking from them. The payment method, that's set up within our SOP maintenance, which I'll go through in just a moment. But there's an option there for online card payment. And that's the one that's automatically created if we select it within the settings that we want to take online card payments. And as I mentioned, we do have to have a merchant account set up for that option to be available. If you were to take that, okay, let's say £100. Okay, then at the point of saving the order, it will prompt me for all the online card payment details. So the card number, the issue number, expiry date, that sort of thing. Let's start adding items. Here we have the 4 options available to us. So it's prompting us to what we want to sell: standard item, free text item, additional charge or comment line. If we change any of those settings within the SOP settings menu, we would only see standard items or only see free text items if that's all that's relevant to our business and that's all that we want to sell. Let's select this particular item. Okie dokie. So how many of these items do I want to sell? I'm just going to sell one of those items. The quantity to allocate has defaulted to that one because we have the stock available to fulfill this sales order. And also because we had in the settings, we said we wanted it to automatically allocate on order entry. If that was switched off within the order processing option, we would have to manually select allocate stock, select this order when we were ready to allocate the stock to this order. If I go to my nominal analysis, you can see that the revenue code there is 31100, cost center SAL and department BES. It's picked up that nominal code as the default from the stock item. So the 31100 is the stock code for sales for this item. But the cost center and department has been picked up from the customer account. And again, that's because within the settings, that's exactly what we told Sage to do, to pick up the nominal code from the stock item, but to pick the cost center department from the customer. It's now generated the order number based on our settings, and it's showing me that order number again based on our settings. Okay, I'm going to refresh my screen. So that's the order that we've now generated. Now, before I carry on, there's a few other things that I just want to go through in SOP maintenance. First of all, we have user permissions. Now, for each user, you can define what they can do within sales order processing. A number of options available to us. So you're allowing this particular user to view the profit values on an order, to view the discount calculations on order lines. They are allowed to override the credit hold on orders. So by default, if a customer has, say, a £1,000 credit limit, if a sales order were to take that customer over its credit limit, that sales order will go on hold. But if this is ticked, the user will be prompted, asking them if they want to override the credit hold. In other words, process that order regardless of the fact that they've gone over their credit limit. There's also an option, are we allowing users to override prices and discounts on order lines? And what that means is that if you've got your price book set up, so each customer has their own price bands and you're confident that those selling prices are correct, then you don't want your users to override that. They just have to accept the default sales price for the particular item for that particular customer. So by unticking this, they won't have that option to enter a price. Override the default stock fulfillment method. There are a number of stock fulfillment methods. It can come from stock, it can come from a supplier via stock, or it can go from a supplier direct to the customer. There can be default setup on an item by item basis, and it's asking here if users are allowed to override the fulfillment method. Override the default confirmation method. The confirmation method being, is confirmation required at all for text items? Is free text, a free text item is going to be confirmed through the separate menu option, or are they going to be confirmed via the standard goods dispatched option? Are we allowing users to override the stock item unit cost price? I don't tend to think that that's useful, but I'm sure people out there will tell me otherwise. But it will pick up the cost price from the stock item itself. And are we allowing the user to generate purchase orders from sales orders? So in other words, to create back-to-back orders. So if I raise a sales order for 10 of a stock item, I can do save and generate purchase order, and it will create a purchase order linked to that sales order. So when that purchase order is received, it will automatically allocate that stock to that sales order. You can also define default warehouses for users. So when they're entering sales orders, they don't have to select a warehouse every time. If you've got different people working in different warehouses, it's very convenient just to have that default set up just for speed. Okay, actually what I wanted to do, sorry, I'm just going to untick all of that just so you can see just how limited you can make the order entry. So if I now enter a new order for the same customer and for the same item, okay, you can see here that I'm going to enter the quantity. I can't enter a price. I don't have visibility of that at all. I can't even see the cost. I have no option here to see the profitability. It's defaulted my nominal as it would have done previously, and I can save that. Okay. I don't have the option now to save and generate the purchase order. That's grayed out because as a user, I don't have access to that functionality. If I go back and give myself full permission, and OK to that. If I go back in there and edit the item, I can now see the unit cost. I can see the profit. Oopsie, edit that again. Forgot to point out the fulfillment method. So how do I want this order to be fulfilled? And I also have access to that save and generate purchase order. I also can see the order profit. That's now visible to me as well. So you can be quite selective what individual users can do within the sales order process. Within SOP maintenance as well, there's a few things that I just want to point out to you that are available. You can create sales order items. Now what these are items that you can select from a drop-down list when you're raising new sales orders, but you don't hold stock of them. It really is just a very simple drop-down list of items. It's not used very often, I have to be honest. Most people either use stock or not, okay? And if you're using stock, you want the full functionality, not just a list of items. But that's there available if it would be of any use. Maintain payment methods, okay? So you can set up any kind of payment methods. So it could be checks if you're taking check payments. It can be cash if you've got a trade counter and you're taking cash from people, or any of the cards that we've got set up here. It's just text. You can set up that drop-down list. If you notice, I don't have an online card payment there. That's just an automatically generated payment method that is created when we tick that option. So it's visible through sales order processing, but it's not visible through the payment methods screen here. You also have reports on payment methods. So at the end of the day, when you're doing your cashing up, you can see how much you should have taken in cash, how much you should have taken by all of your separate cards. So when it comes to doing your bank, you've got all the figures available to you. You can also have multiple invoice layouts as well within sales order processing, and multiple credit note layouts. You just define what the layout is here, and quite a few people may have different layouts perhaps for different currencies. They have different bank account details printed out on different invoice layouts depending on the currency of the sales order. If you charge different carriage rates and you have some defaults, some default charges, default nominal codes, you can set the drop-down list here, and that will be available to you when you raise your sales order. So if I were to just edit one of these lines, you can define a code, give it a description, a default VAT rate, a default charge rate, a default cost value, and also default nominal code. So when you're selling your carriage and delivery, it's just an easier and a quicker method for users to actually select all the right details. We have customer delivery addresses. So for any customer, you can set up multiple delivery addresses. I would suggest the description is a little more clear than just 1, 2, and 3, maybe the postcode. But if we edit that, you can type in the full delivery address, and you can select your delivery address then when you raise the sales order for this particular customer. Then finally, we have analysis codes, which can be defaulted, they can be mandatory. If I just edit one of these, and you can even get a default value from the customer code. So that would feed through automatically. So let's suppose for our sales area, that would be covered as a default from the customer code. We just define which code we want the default to come from. We can also feed the analysis through to the stock transaction. So we can feed it through to whichever nominal code, analysis code, on the stock transaction that we choose to do so. Okay, so let's go back to our order. Okie dokie. If I go to my delivery and invoicing, this is where now we can say we don't want to use the invoice address for our delivery address. We want to use something different, and we can actually select from, as I mentioned, any of our existing customer delivery addresses. You can also add new addresses on the fly. So if the address you're wanting to deliver to is not there on the list, you can add it so it will be there for future use. Or if it's just a one-off, you can just type in the delivery address unique to this particular order. Okay, let's go now to our process map. So we've entered our new order. Okay, if I click on Acknowledge Order, it's telling me that I don't use this particular option. So again, from our settings, we said we didn't want to print the order acknowledgement, and hence that's not available to us. So it just speeds up our sales order process. Print picking lists. If I were to select our order and print, okay, it's printing out the picking list, and it's doing that manual process because of two settings that we set. One, we said we wanted to print a picking list, and secondly, we said we wanted to do the manual picking list. We didn't want it to automatically be generated when we entered the sales order. When we dispatch the order, just save that. It's generated a dispatch note because that's what we've said we wanted it to do within our settings. When we print the invoice, okay, we could select from any of our multiple invoice layouts that we wanted this to be printed out on. By default, it will print the invoice that is assigned to this particular customer, but you always have the option to override that. Fantastic. Okay, so that's our invoice printed. And then the final part of the process is to post invoices and credit notes. Now, as soon as I post them, the sales ledger is going to be automatically updated with those transactions. And the reason being is because of the setting that we said that's what we wanted it to do. Within the sales ledger period end routines, there is an option there to update pending transactions, where if we hadn't ticked that option in sales order processing to automatically update the sales ledger, we would need to go through this particular process and update those transactions that we posted from sales order processing. If I go to my customer list and I just amend the account, if I go to my trading tab, you can see here that that's the cost center and the department that's assigned to this particular customer account. And if I go to my stock list and amend the details for the stock item that we've sold, you can see that the sales nominal code there is a 31100. So when we raise the sales order for this item to that customer, the default nominal code has been picked up as 31100, cost center SAL, department BES, based on the customer settings there. Okay, if I go back to my sales order list, within the quotations option, if I enter a new quotation, okay, I have the option to select a prospect account. When we raised the sales order, we had the option to create a new sales order for a cash account, whereas within quotations, I can select the prospect account. So because I've selected prospect account, it's not prompting me now for account number. It knows which account the quotation is for, which is our generic prospect account. And I can type in the name and address details. So type in the name, the address, okay, and then I just enter the details as normal. So what am I quoting this prospect for? How many am I quoting them for? That's our standard selling price, but I have the ability to overtype that because I've got that ability within the user settings in sales order processing, and I can just save that. There's an option then to convert that quotation to a sales order. Now, if I were to select that quotation that we've just generated, okay, there's my new account limited, and I convert, and I say, yes, I want to do that, and okay, and continue. Okay, it's now asking me how I want to convert it. Which account is this quotation for? I could select an existing customer account, but I also have the option to create a new customer account during the conversion process. So if I select new, it's pulled through my name and my address details. I just have to give it an account number. Oops, that one's already typical. There we are. Give it a unique account code. Enter all the account details. Save that. So now when I continue, it's generated a sales order number, 5111. And if I view that, you can see it's for the new account that we've just created. So your new account is only created at the point that a sales order is created, not at the point that a quotation is entered. If I refresh my list again, fab. I will go through. Actually, before I do that, because it might crash on me, because I want to show you the online payment, because it can speed up your receipts process. But of course, I have actually got a real merchant account. So what I'm going to do first of all is just point out within sales orders that there is an option there for repeat order templates. It's nothing to do with the settings or the parameters. It's just a menu option, which can be really useful if you do have repeat orders for any of your customers. What you can do is you just select the customer that you want to create the template for, and we're going to create a new template. So we give it a description. So say monthly charges. Which customer is this for, and how frequent do we want the repeat to be? So it can be any number of days, weeks, months, or years. So I'm going to say this is going to be done once a month. It's going to be done on day 28, and it's going to start today. You can put an expiry. So if it's just perhaps an annual contract, you want to expire after 12 uses or on a specific date, you just define that within the expiry details here. What we do now is add the details. So add items. And I'm going to say this is a free text item, and I'm just going to pop in there monthly charge. How much are we charging them each month? Say £1,000. And I'm going to say confirmation is not required in this instance. So we save that. We just save our template. And now that's available to us for processing. So what we do on a monthly basis then, we can come into our repeat order templates. We can show everything. We can sort them by the dates that they're next due to see what is actually due for invoicing. We can create an order from that. It's just telling me there's no errors. Okay, and it's generated a new sales order, 5112, for that particular customer for our monthly charge for the value that we've created within the template. It just means you're not going to forget any regular invoices that you need to send out to this particular customer. Now I changed the confirmation method for this particular order to say that I didn't want to go through the confirmation process. So because it's a text item, if I go to my process map, we've entered the order. We know we don't need to acknowledge any orders. There's nothing to print on the picking list because it's a text item. I've changed the confirmation method to say we don't want confirmation. So if I just go straight to print invoices, there's our invoice already waiting to be invoiced. So it can be a very, very quick process of sales ordering depending on the parameters and the options that you select. All I've done is enter the order, and now I'm going to print the invoice, and that's job done. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is just perhaps show you how that online payment will work. If I were to select the customer account here, and I'm going to add an item, I'll stick with our same item that we've been working with. So quantity of 1 at a cost price of £299. I'm going to save that. Go to my payment with order tab. I want to record the payment with the order. I'm going to take the full payment, invoice the payment immediately. The payment method I'm going to select is that online card payment, which is automatically created, but it's not visible through the payment methods maintenance screen. I'm now going to save. Oops. Let's get rid of this, sorry. Let's try again and save that. Okay, so the customer order number. Okay, it's now asking me to enter the card details. Because I'm not a real trader within the merchant account, I can't use an existing card details. That's not available to me. I can record new card details. The amount is defaulted to what we said, the full order value. I select the card type, enter the card number, the name, issue number if it's relevant, and the security code, start date, and the expiry date. Save that. Okay, it's giving me that message because, as I say, I don't have it set up. But that would send through that receipt or payment through to that card. We would then have the payment recorded against that particular invoice, against that particular customer, and it's just waiting to be cleared through the banks when we get our bank reconciliation. What I will do is just select a normal payment so you can see how that's posting through. If I just save that. It's generated sales order number 5113. Okay, and it's generated an invoice automatically for that payment. So that invoice for order number 5113 for £299 has been generated. That can be printed out and given to your customer. However, if I refresh, you can see here that the order is still live and it's waiting to be processed. So a number of things are here to be aware of. Let's have a little look at our customer account. Oops, I haven't done a posting. Right, so first of all, let's post that invoice across. So now let's have a little look at the transactions on that account. Okay, and there we have the invoice and the payment going through our customer account. It's been paid in full. If I go back to my sales order list, I can now process that order. So if I go to my processing map, okay, and print the picking list. And I dispatch those goods out. Okay, I go to print invoices. Okay, there's 5113 there. So print that. Okie dokie. It's now put on that particular invoice that the value of the goods is the £299 less the payment that we've already received. So the net value of the invoice that it's generating will be nothing, purely to complete that process for that sales order. So now when I post invoices, you can see that that invoice is going through, but at zero value because we've already put the invoice on that particular account with the payment. Okay, so that really brings us to the end of this morning's session. So we've gone through all the settings, the different options, the order entry, the default accounts, the order processing and printing. We've been through our user permissions and how you can sort of limit or give people as much access as you want to with regard to the sales order entry. We've also had a little look at the SOP maintenance, so sales order items, payment methods, different layouts and delivery addresses. And then we've gone through the process of creating new orders and taken them all through the same process, but with different settings. So we could see the effect on printing acknowledgements, printing dispatch notes, cash orders, prospect quotations. We've also had a little look at repeat order templates. So I hope that's been of benefit to you. What we're going to be doing next month, I think, be really useful to everybody is a housekeeping best practice session. So what you should and shouldn't be doing within Sage 200 to maintain the integrity of your data and look after your system to ensure that everyone's confidence in the data is at all-time high. So hopefully you can join us for that one. And I hope you enjoyed this morning's session. Any questions, as I say, please enter them and I will get back to you all as soon as I can.